Thank you, councillors, thank you, officers, and most importantly, thank you to the Boyne Valley for being here this afternoon. And thank you for attending our council meeting this morning. We, as you know, we used to take our council meetings out and about all the time before COVID happened, and then after COVID we've been live streaming them, and we got a fantastic team that do this live stream. It's probably better than Parliament House, if I'm honest. They do a really good job. So the need to take council meetings out and about has probably been superseded by the live stream, but nothing beats getting out into the community anyway. So we thought we'd bring the council meetings, and this is the bit where we can have the forums. I love this new way of doing things where you can catch up with the councillors first, because sometimes people don't like asking questions in a big group. They're happy to do that one-on-one with councillors. You can submit questions, which I'll answer shortly, and then you can ask questions after that. I know Councillor Churchill has to leave shortly, and thank you for being here today, Glenn, and we've had all councillors here, so feel free to disappear anytime you like. But first I want to hand over to Frank, who's got something he'd like to say.
Just got a presentation for you, Matt. Oh, we've got to go back on there, do we? Yeah, this is just a thank you for the support you gave us for our Australia Day breakfast, world famous Australia Day breakfast. Yeah. There we go.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay.
Do it again and take a photo, please.
Yeah, that was supposed to be handed out to Melissa. She's the one that came out and officiated on the actual day. And she was also supposed to come to our thank you barbecue where we had planned to make that presentation. But at least today the whole council knows just how much we appreciate your help. Thanks.
All right, let's get a photo. Hold that behind there somehow. Thank you, and I tell you, that's the easiest way to reassure that you get your grant approved again next year. Not silly, Frank, he's been doing this longer than me. Well done. What is it, 1,500? Approved. Thanks, Lisa. Where's our CEO? Oh, Mark's got the money. There we are. Thank you, Lisa. Well, we've never said no, and we wouldn't, because we've got a special fund we put aside for Australia Day, and we do celebrate Australia Day, despite the fact that some people like to carry on that we have our citizenship ceremony the day before. Heaven forbid. Most people in the country have never been to a citizenship ceremony, and that is not celebrating Australia Day. That is just making someone a new citizen. And we'll be doing that again in a couple of weeks. And I can tell you the people becoming Aussies on the 1st of July feel just as Aussie as those becoming citizens on the 25th of January. But we celebrate Australia Day, and we're happy to do it in the Valley, and I'm glad that Councillor Holsum was able to be here. Now, a whole bunch of pre-submitted questions, and I'm going to throw to some of our officers that are here to help answer them, and they are all here, all our general managers and a whole bunch of staff. And thank you, Glenn, and I know, Councillor Cameron, you're the driver. I was rude to my driver before, Simon, sorry about that. Yes, you can.
The lovely ladies for the beautiful one. Yeah.
Work. Nice work. And the men might have made some of that too, you never know. I saw that fruitcake and I went, I know who's made that. What was? No, it wasn't. Anyway, you don't know your Boyne Valley fruitcake then, I can tell you now. I knew who that was straight away. I think a man made the sausage rolls or party pies. That's about where we went. Thank you, Natalia. Okay, what was the first question? All right, would council consider investing in access and inclusion action plan? We definitely do that. Maybe I've read that question wrong, because we have an access and inclusion plan, which I know you're involved in, Melissa. Well, I'll throw to you or to Kylie. Okay, you do it. Again, well, you've taken over the Valley today.
Yeah, I'll have your job soon. Watch yourself. So that I can have some support. I believe there was a little bit more information that we could gather in regards to this question. So what was the question again, Mr. Mayor?
It says, would council consider, revisiting the access and inclusion action plan. Revisiting.
I see, and look, they said Councillor H next to it. Look at that. Yeah. Anyway, yes, we would 100% be open to having further conversations and identifying what it is in particular that your community needs for access and inclusion. And if you wanted to grab me or Kylie or Bri before we leave to actually give us some more specifics about what you might actually like that to look like, so that we can include that in our future planning as well. Or even to expand now while I'm standing here. Yes, Mark, you're good with that? Okay, beautiful. No, that's it. Done, I'm out.
We'll see, you might be back. What was the next question? What future work is planned for Blackmans Gap Road? Well, I guess in the last 18 months or so, we've spent probably about $1 million on Blackmans Gap Road. We've been continually working there, although a few years, as you would well be aware, that there was not a lot of work done on the road. We are still committed to eventually sealing it all. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe 9-10 kilometres left to go? You guys drive it more often than me? 18? Oh, someone's driven it and put the speedo on. Is it really that much? Okay, well, there you go. But we've definitely in the last 18 months, we've definitely spent about $1 million of funding to upgrade the road. And Works for Queensland is a project that we could potentially use to fund other sections to seal it. It is, maybe, I don't know the traffic numbers, maybe 70 to 100 or something a day. But when it becomes the Bruce Highway, it gets very busy. Which is really a state issue. That's why we try and get some funding out of the state or feds, which we did get some funding for the last lot of the works that was done there. So in terms of what the future sealing program is, that's up to council every budget, but we obviously want to see it completely sealed. It is one of those roads, Blackman Gap and Lowmead Road, which we are spending a lot of money on Lowmead Road as well, both because they become the Bruce Highway, but both because they're connector roads. Eventually we'll seal them all, but we just got to go with whatever the budget says. But we have spent $1 million in the last 18 months, so that's not a small amount of money. Let's have a look. What's the next one? What was the software? This was you, Mark. What was the software the council uses for our website? So I was just explaining, having a chat to Mark about that in the kitchen. Council's website's not great. We acknowledge that. That's why we've teamed up with about 50 other councils in Queensland to get a better deal so we can get it cheaper. And we're partnering with Local Government Queensland, which I'm the president of, so I'll declare an interest. And if anyone wants to talk more about it, we can go to Kylie. But the program we're using is called Granicus. It's pretty exciting stuff. Now, it might have some other people smarter than me when it comes to information technology might be able to find some flaws in it. But basically, the idea is that like a buying power, like we could go in together with other councils and we get a better deal. And then they can tailor the programs to what councils use. Because we've all got libraries, we've all got pools, we've all got entertainment centres, art galleries, and we all have parks mowing schedules and road schedules. So the idea is to make it easier for everybody to use. And if there's some glitches, and I'm more than happy to connect you up with our team at Local Government Queensland. Tracy has just spoken at the Tech Leaders Summit in Sydney. She's an expert when it comes to this area. And I can tell you that 50 councils, or roughly 47 councils at Queensland, I think it is, didn't team up together to get this program because we think it's a dud. We think it's a good one. We hope it is, and we'll see from there. Let's see what else the next question was. Could you outline councillors' code of conduct? Okay, councillor code of conduct depends if it's in. Is that what the question was? Yep. Well, in a council meeting or in public, I'm not sure about where this question came from. So, well, I guess I expect councillors to behave. Here they are in the room, so I expect them all to behave very well and appropriately, as I would, anybody in any community setting. So if it's talking about in a council meeting, you were here this morning, you see how I chair the meeting. I try to make sure everyone gets a say. I write down who's next, and I think we do a pretty good job in our council meeting. Desley, she can speak honestly. She's not here, not a councillor anymore, but certainly was involved for at least 8 years. The idea is make sure everyone gets their say. And then councillors in the community, well, I'm sure they should hold themselves in high esteem and do the right thing by the community. If not, you get the chance to vote them out every 4 years. I think I answered that one. Happy to answer more on it. And why do I get all the questions? What would councillors like to hear input on? The forum should have a two-way information. Well, I think the forum does have a two-way information. We just did that. And the idea of the tables is for everyone to have a say and then us to answer your questions. And then now you can ask me any question you like that's not on this list.
There's also in the conversations pages, every time council wants input on something, it gets published there. So the best way is actually to subscribe
all of them?
to conversations page. So every time there's something that we want input on, you get sent an email.
Yes, Mark.
You guys are working on cemetery policies and you're thinking about how you fund volunteers, if that's at the moment. And I thought, you guys know you've got that on the plate, and I thought it might be a good idea for you guys to raise that with the community while you're here. That's what I meant by two-way.
All right. Well, yeah. I guess that was the idea of the tables before, but if there's something, like if someone had asked that question, I could have provided an answer for you, but I can give you an answer off the top of my head. So we are reviewing our cemetery policy, and that comes down to A, where the future cemeteries are going to be. I know places like Agnes Water 1770 would like at least a memorial garden. Also the, I guess not so much the operating hours, but reservations in our cemeteries as well. So particularly Catholics would like to be buried, and they'd like to have reservations so that family members can be buried together. And currently our policy doesn't necessarily allow that. So personally, I don't think that's right. I think that for the little cost of what it is to reserve a plot, and I'm sure I've got officers looking at me going, oh no, this is going to cost a fortune. I don't know that it is. I think it's worth reviewing, and that's why we're reviewing it. So different cemeteries allow different things to happen, and the review of that, and I'd love to hear your feedback. What we're reviewing mostly is around the reservations of those plots. So there is a cost, other than when someone passes away, you go in and you organise it, and then it's sort of next in line. Once upon a time, you could make reservations, and I know personally I'd like to have all my family together. That's just me. And other people might feel the same, and others might say, I don't mind. But more and more and more people are taking the opportunity to be cremated, and that's just the way of the world. But anyway, we've got to review. That's an unfortunate policy that no one really wants to talk about much. But
Could you consider reopening
well, that's part of the review. We could.
That was part of the review when we reviewed years ago, and I know that we've done imaging and
Builyan, yeah.
So that was one of my questions.
Well, one of the things, funny you should say that, not cemeteries, but we had a review yesterday of our waste management collection, and it was definitely talked about transfer stations. And I remember the day when I think there was at least 2, but possibly 3 in the valley. And then we had those bins for a bit. Remember, they were never any good. So we're reviewing how our transfer stations work as well. And don't worry, I'm not in favour of closing yours down, but maybe there might be a way we can make it work better and open longer. I'll throw it out there, Simon. This was his idea in the car on the way here, and I've already mentioned it to Carly, who did the process yesterday. And it's only early stages, but is it possible for it to be open 24 hours and unmanned? So therefore, there's no cost to council. These are the sorts of conversations we're having, because it costs us to have it manned, and then you can only go there for a couple of hours a week, and it's really it's not really usable for everyone in the community, because unless you're available at that time on that day, but then what's the cost to if it gets vandalised and all the rest of it? So that's just some of the things we're looking at. As we review cemetery policies, we're also reviewing our waste management plans as well. And that happened yesterday with a strategic planning workshop. It was all day, and some of the conversations were around transfer stations. And I did make it very clear, and I had support from the councils, we're not closing any. So you can kill that idea off right away. If anything, it would be opening more for longer, or making the ones we've got work better.
Just like to say, some of the people who over the years, when we've talked about the cemetery policy, and Desley was deeply involved, aren't here to talk about it anymore. So I would like to be able to roll over in the grave and look at the range. Yeah.
We undertook a plan for the region's cemeteries in 2022, as Desley's mentioned there. One of the action items was indeed to further investigation into reopening Naguran. So that is a piece of work which is on the work plan. There's some geotech, and we think there's some unmarked graves there we'll need to consider about what we do about that and what the capacity there actually is. But it's on the work plan. It was identified as part of that planning exercise, and it's certainly something that we're looking into.
Thanks, Mark. There you go. Up the back there.
To the rubbish, the transfer station, sorry. I think they're a great thing because, and on the property that I bought, it's got a dump. It's an absolute disgrace, you know. So having a transfer station that does scrap metal as well. So when I pull down an old fence now, I take all the steel. What I'm saying is, they're needed. Where I come from in Mandubba, my neighbour had a in-pit dump as well, and in the 2013 flood, it all ended up in Bundaberg. Right? So, and there was some absolute disgraceful stuff in that dump. Or it's still in the Burnett River somewhere along the river from Mandubba to Bundaberg, you know. So I think transfer stations and dumps are great, and I would not have them unmanned, you know. Like in this day and age, you can't trust anybody to do anything right. You'd go there and there'd be rubbish in the steel bin and, you know, stuff like that. So you're better off having them manned, you know.
Yeah, and that's what we do, and that's just something that was just mentioned in the car on the way out of here. I would like, and I'm only speaking for me, not the full council in this instance, I would just like to be able to make it more accessible for everyone. We just talked about our access and inclusion plan, and we couldn't afford, or the ratepayers couldn't afford to have all our transfer stations open all day, every day, because one of our transfer stations has 7 visitors a week. I think that would be about the number. Yeah, there we go, 7. I won't say which one it is, and even that one we're not looking at closing down.
People can just go, yeah, it's open Thursday, it's open Saturday, it's open Sunday. So, you know, you just got to work with that. You know, like that's the way the world is these days. You've got to work with things, and I think it's fine.
That's how it is right now, and that's what we're going to. That's nothing's changing, but as part of a strategic review, you got to look at how you're doing things and see if you can do things better. And maybe we can't do things better. Maybe they're already being done as best as they can.
Talk to the community, like people up here. They might feel that they could do with one up this end of the valley as well, because
we did have one up here.
You know, but I'm saying, you know, like you talk to the community, wouldn't you? Like it wouldn't be councillors that make that decision because you just don't live here.
No, the council, we only did a strategic review yesterday, so the next stage wasn't even going to bring it up today because we're not even at the point of having a conversation with the community because realistically we're nowhere near there. That's just, all it is just reviewing what we're doing and seeing how we can do it better. And it's not just transfer stations, it's about what we do in terms of green bins. It's called FOGO, so food organics, garden organics, whether we move into that. We've just signed a new contract with JJ Richards, which for about 7 to 10 years, which allows us to, somewhere in that contract period, transition, if we choose to FOGO, so food organics, garden organics, or just GO, which is just the garden organics, which means we'd have a green bin. Now, if it's food organics and garden organics, you have one less red service a week. It goes to a fortnightly service, and the food organics, garden organics, FOGO, would be every week because that's the sort of stuff that needs to be taken away weekly. But if it's just the garden organics, then you're adding an extra service, even though you're only doing less a thing, because it would be every fortnight. So there's just all different, the whole waste strategy. Our landfill, our MRF, which burnt down, which is our recycling facility in Rockhampton, burnt down. We're currently taking our recyclables to the Sunshine Coast. Now, we've got a contract for the next 4 years to do that as well. So we're looking at between now and when that contract comes up for renewal, that we don't want to renew it because it's too far to drive with the recyclables. So we want a solution, i.e. in Gladstone or Rocky or somewhere close. And I know Fraser Coast has got their facility open. That's closer, but still a long way away. So it's not just about transfer stations, it's about the whole thing. And if we did determine we were opening them longer or wanted to open them longer or open another one, that's a conversation we'd definitely be having. But I'm happy to throw it out there today. So feel free. Thank you for your feedback because that's the sort of stuff we want to hear as we go through that. I just threw that out. Sorry, Simon, you brought that in the car up on the way out. I like the idea of making it open longer, but I did say exactly those things. Some people, not Boyne Valley people, of course, but some people will take advantage of that. And he said, surely someone's not going to drive out from Calliope and make a mess of the place. And I thought, well, you just never know.
Well, you see, a typical example, mattresses. So to take a mattress to the dump costs $35. Right? So somebody in their wisdom, you'll see driving back home just before you get halfway back to Calliope, you'll see 3 mattresses dumped on the side of the road. You know, I've been meaning to go and pick them up, but I haven't got there yet. And, So when people got to spend money, because I said when I took a mattress to the dump, and Lee goes, "Oh, it costs you $35 a dump, Dad," and I thought, "Oh, gee, well, you know, like." So I took it home, put it in a stack of timber and burnt it. Not everybody's got that thing, and then I took all the wire and put it in the bin back at the dump, you know. But people that can't afford that sort of thing, they will dump on the side of the road, you know. Back where I come from, Mundubra, they decided to close the dump on Sundays, and then just so people could make their point, they started dumping stuff outside the gate on Sunday mornings. You know, like, you know, people will, you know, burr up about things that they don't like, but, you know, yeah, I think transfer station's a great idea, you know, and I wouldn't have it unmanned.
No. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Boyne Valley, like royalty over here, nothing? All right, that's a wrap. No, surely not. Michelle, I thought you were asking a question. I'm not taking questions from you. Who's got a question? Oh, Mark. Sorry. No, you can ask me questions all day, every day.
You're talking about funding volunteers and volunteer organisations.
Yeah, I'm not talking about funding volunteers, but funding volunteer organisations.
Yeah. There's big not-for-profits and company limiteds that have staff and apply for funding, and the first rule every year is to get enough funding so that they can be paid to work. Mm-hmm. And then there's Builyan and Manipex Community Development Association that is entirely volunteers, and I think you need a slant. It'd be easy to say that there could be a perception of inequality in ability to apply for funding and for providing funding. And I think it's important that you recognise fully volunteer groups first.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that happens with state government grants as well, because I often have to write a letter of support, and if I do, and I know it's an organisation like this one, or like the Country Women's Association, or like the Gladstone Harbour Festival, which is festivals and events, although they probably have someone who's paid at the moment now. They do, yep, sorry, but they used to be when Judy Wicker was there, got shown my age. So, yeah, there are certainly many organisations that are, everyone involved is a volunteer, and there are other organisations that are not-for-profits, but they might seem to be a volunteer group because they've got a lot of volunteers with them, but they might be some of the executive or some of the CEO might be getting paid. They're still a not-for-profit because they're providing that service to the community. That's a gap has been identified, and they're providing it, and then good on them as well because they're still good groups. But certainly I can see the absolute difference. And when I write a letter of support, I will say that in the letter of support. This is a fully volunteer organisation, and we're proud to support them, and I write letters of support every week. But that's only a letter of support, and if you're applying for council, I mean, you could always put that in your application. We know, though. We know who's who. Because, yeah. So, yeah, probably should stand corrected. Harbour Festival, yes, does have a paid person there, but, I mean, that's a pretty big event they run there every year, but most of the people involved in that organisation are volunteers as well. I know, because I've volunteered myself there many times. What else? Surely you've got more questions. No, Michelle? No, Natalia? No questions?
About the volunteer thing, it's not a question.
You can answer that if you like.
No, it was just that some organisations are not-for-profit by the governance structure, but they deliver services that are specialised. I don't know, it could be a carer. That person needs to make a living because that's what they do for a job, working for a not-for-profit business or organisation.
Yeah.
And the other ones are, I guess, the difference with service groups. Service groups are like the CWAs, the Rotaries, the Lions. Well, even this place could also have a program if you decide to one day, for example, have I don't know, children groups that are delivered by someone that has certain skills. So you can employ that person with those skills to run that from here. They're actually great ways of making your bigger organisation sustainable and provide more services to those that you care about, really.
Yeah. Hello, Desley. How's the pub going?
Oh, right, thank you very much. So I just have a question. Since we've bought the pub, and there's during the process of, like, out here, like, we got Grand Hotel many pieces of name. The reason why we called it that is because there's no identity of Boyne Valley. So, you know, if we just put Grand Hotel, Boyne Valley, people would, in an 80-kilometre area. So, and talking to people over the bar, And the locals are really feeling that they have lost their identity by having being Boyne Valley, not Ngurin, Yabobo, Builyan and Many Peaks. And when we started signing our paperwork, everything came up as Boyne Valley, nothing came up as Many Peaks, and that's the reason why we put Many Peaks in our name. So people knew we were the Many Peaks pub, basically. But I know that was a state government initiative, wasn't it?
Oh, issue.
Oh, issue.
I wish it was their initiative.
Yeah, okay. So it was their issue. What is there that we could either change it? I know it's like the 1770 postcode, not spelling
Mark's
and
probably
whatever.
going to answer this. I'll start by saying absolutely fully support that. Boyne Valley is the collective, but from a council point of view, when you drive into Ngurin, there's a sign that says Ngurin. When you drive into Yabobo, we have a sign, the Gladstone Regional Council sign, Yabobo, Builyan, Many Peaks. So we know there's 4 towns. Convincing Australia Post and others that there is something I'm going to hand to Mark to talk about because he's just turned up here.
So the destination tourists don't know that. So they get to, coming out of Blackmans Gap, they get to a T intersection. Google's telling them the Many Pigs Hotel is turning right. They get along to Collingwood Lane near Yabobo, there's no hotel there. So they're ringing up and saying, this is where they're saying the hotel is. But they should be turning left at the T intersection. But so because it's the whole of the Boyne Valley, so there is an issue with the directions.
Well, yes, I think you need a sign at that intersection.
There is going to be a sign, don't you worry.
This way.
There is. It's happening. Sorry.
Hi, yes. There is the opportunity to directly tell Google what to do, and you can crowdsource that. But we have asked, obviously Mark has put a request in previously, I provided some information to him recently. So it is a department of, they're called now Natural Resources, Mines, Manufacturing, Regional and Rural Development. The summary advice they provided is if it were to be reinstated, there are things to consider. So the proposed boundaries would need to be evaluated against an Australian standard. There's an Australian standard for everything. And some of the considerations there are that all the new localities cannot be isolated from one another, so they must share boundaries. And it's not feasible to create localities solely around a township. The whole of Boyne Valley's boundaries then would need revising. The department believe that redefining Boyne Valley now could confuse those away from the townships. This is again the department's advice, the small population of these townships could make the new localities the smallest in the state, and that may increase council's administrative workload. Not quite sure what line they're drawing there, but it's certainly a consideration for us. Any change would be required to undertake community consultation, and we understand there's been some difficulties with emergency services that the department would also require evidence of any confusion for emergency services to help the case. But ultimately what you've explained there, Desley, is terrific in terms of building a case for change. It is quite a significant collaborative project that would need to be undertaken between the department and council. So we need to weigh up, obviously, priorities against other priorities for regional communities as well. But if you can help us establish the case for change, and with Mark as well, about what that makes you feel, and I know there's placemaking initiatives that Kylie can assist with as well, in terms of the township identities as well. There's lots of ways we can attack this, but currently the work to undertake this isn't funded within our forward programme. You can help us make a case to talk to councils about whether that is included in a future work programme.
Thank you. Yeah, sure.
I put in the CSR last year, and I've got to apologise to Mark because after 4 months, the conspiracy theories were starting to kick in the back of my head. But there's already been work done, but it's a huge project, and I think the point of what Mark's just read out is that it's going to cost council money and time, and it's going to probably have to be something that councillors are going to have to decide at a council meeting to do. I don't know, but that's the impression I'm getting. But certainly there's a lot of work we can do here in the valley to
help us make the case.
Help you make the case.
They should never have changed it. Just leave things alone. They weren't broken. But changing it back now seems like it's going to be torture. That's probably what they wanted. Yes.
Back we had the Boyne Valley and then the townships of, and then list them or something. Like if it was true, so that they were listed under the Boyne Valley, each of them. I
don't know. I would just leave it. They should have just left well enough alone. But they did this progressively. It started with Australia Post. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
you're waiting at the Naguran Hall, they don't know where the Naguran Hall is because their maps or whatever they're reading off don't say it.
That kind of example is probably going to help. So if the community can kind of get examples together, Kathy and Mark sound like you've got a bit of a team going on there, we might be able to counteract what they're saying with emergency services. We say, well, actually, you've made it more confusing by calling it Boyne Valley because there's a fair hike between Many Peaks and Naguran for an ambulance. So if you want to send them to the right location, let's have the right locations.
And there's just one site here where the ambulance went to Boyne Island.
Oh, Boyne Island. Oh, that was close.
Yeah, when they first did it, when they first changed it that afternoon, and they ran for the ambulance, and they must have said, oh, we're in Boyne Valley, and the ambulance went to Boyne Island.
Yeah, well, we can. All those examples will help. I'm sure we can put forward an easy email submission, but if we have to put a detailed submission, and you just got to prioritise what's the biggest priority and whether it's a fish you want to fry. Obviously, we'd like it to change it back, but sometimes these bureaucrats in George Street have made their mind up. Frank.
Yeah, when you start talking about incidents, you've already heard that ambulances have been misdirected. We've had it in the Fire Brigade being misdirected, or people coming to help us have been misdirected. And you've only got to go back and get on to Cindy Bush, who was a candidate, attended a meeting at the Naguran Hall, went out, her car wouldn't start, and she could not get RACQ to her location because they couldn't find Naguran on the map. So you've got all the anecdotal evidence you want. So how we collate that to make it different. And I mean, we do not ever want to lose the name Boyne Valley because that's us. But we would like to know that we are at Builyan today and we're part of the Boyne Valley. And I mean, there's many peaks, it's over the hill, but there's no dividing line where they join. And the same with Naguran and Yubobo. I mean, that's a bit like saying that McKinley and Kainoona, they're a long way apart. And they certainly don't share a boundary, but they are two individual little pieces. I think that we are four individual little pieces in the Boyne Valley, and we deserve to have our own entity or identity, whatever you like to call it, within the bigger one. So we're all a bit parochial about our own little patches.
A few more of those examples, so we get them. Maybe Desley wants to coordinate getting those together over a beer at the pub. No, well, if we can get all the information together, we can put forward something to the state, but it's just a matter of whether they're going to do anything with it. Well, it's worth a try. Hello, Melissa. I love it when councillors take over with the questions. Yeah, by all means.
This lady here was just saying, what's the difference than having suburbs in Gladstone? So you have Clinton and you have New Auckland and those sorts of things. So you have Boyne Valley and then as a suburb. I don't know.
Well, firstly, I never supported the change, so I want to say that again. But suburbs have boundaries. So I can tell you when I cross from Sun Valley into Talina, and I can go from Sun Valley into Kincora, and same again with Tallulah Estate. You know where they are. So they'll say there's a clear boundary, and that might be the problem. But that's okay. You could kind of guess where Many Peaks starts. We could say it's at the sign, but it's probably this side of the sign. Either way. I don't think the boundaries are going to be the biggest issues, even if they're anecdotal. The idea is this is Many Peaks, and where the halls and the CWA is Yubobo, and so forth and so forth.
One of the big issues that we have, certainly with the emergency services, is that if somebody calls for an ambulance or a fire truck to go to Yubobo, they end up at Naguran at Yubobo Street. And that creates confusion. Then they get down there and say, well, there's no bloody fire, or there's no patient here. What's going on? And they're like, well, mate, you're about 8 k's away from us. So
that sounds like a
those
emergency
are the little
services
things
issue,
that we are having trouble because that individuality is no longer part of it.
Yeah.
So if you could build that individuality into the whole, we're laughing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll definitely try and get a case together, and it's probably going to be hard. Let's be prepared. Let's be prepared for that.
We do not want to divide the Boyne Valley.
No, you still want to be Boyne Valley with the 4 names that were always there.
Yeah.
I think I've heard that loud and clear. All right. No other questions?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Sorry, Matt, you'll get sick of me.
Never, Mark, never. Kathy.
can you have a close look, or council have a close look about funding for rural fire brigades now?
Yes, who's my councillor on the Rural Fire Brigade?
Funding group? Me?
Yes.
Yes.
Maybe you can.
So,
What's the question?
Just say yes when he gets here.
the rural fire brigades, as the unincorporated associations that they used to be,
Yeah.
no longer exist.
Sorry, what don't exist?
Incorporated association.
The unincorporated associations, that was the rural fire brigade, and that's who you used to donate money to each year. It's actually a moot point as to whether they exist or not, but the new Fire Act says that you may not have any organisation of any sort that calls itself a rural fire brigade or even intimates that it's a rural fire brigade. I forget the wording in the Act, but that's what it is.
This is after the change between Queensland Fire and Emergency Management and Queensland Police, or maybe I might pass straight to Mark, unless you want it. No.
Unless you guys are going to be prepared to donate to the state, because that's what you're doing.
So we've actually got surety from fire department as to how they're managing that in terms of and making sure that every brigade keeps its individual identity. So we've got that assurance from them. So as you know, we still essentially donate through the fire brigade groups. So we donate that, and we got the Port Curtis group and the Builyan Valley group that advise on that. So we've still gone through that process. We only probably 2 weeks ago had essentially determined the allocations for next year. And that was my first question that I asked, essentially Fire Department, how are we going to manage this to ensure that we still keep the separate identities, because if it was going to be amalgamated, it was going to be an issue. And we've got surety, and we're going to get annual reporting on that.
The thing is that the local brigades no longer have any control of that money. Frank? No, we don't.
Happy to have that conversation.
So certainly the money's been allocated and will be put into separate sub-accounts for each of the brigades. And I understand that there's different ways in which you can access that through different purchase cards and the like, and reimbursement procedures. So happy to take that offline and work through.
Definitely.
At this stage, we will have those funds. We won't have direct control over them. We get a docket. We can submit it to the area office and they will pay it out of our pool. We do have what they call a corporate card. We will no longer be able to have a direct debit like we've done, so our SAP phone, instead of every month it comes out, that will have to be a monthly transaction done manually. So there's going to be teething issues. I'm not happy with it. No one is happy with it, but then no one is happy with the change anyhow. But whatever we get allocated, we will still have a roundabout access to, even though you won't be able to pick up your bank statement and see where you are. It's going to be a bit unwieldy until it all sorts out, but I think there's light at the end of the tunnel. But at the stroke of a pen, they can take all your funding off you and you've got nothing to do about it.
Happy to have the conversation offline about some of the practicalities on that, but that was quite an in-depth conversation that we had, is that if we're going to fund this and we want to make sure that your Bobo's got it, that this piece has got it and this piece has got it, because there's quite a number of brigades around in our region, obviously, quite a high number, and we didn't want it to be confused into some just lump sum that, you know, you've got to then go and fight for your little piece of. So we have very clearly set out within that funding agreement what exactly goes to each of the different brigades. Our conversations around the move to what they've changed, obviously there's a lot of moving factors to it, but little things like some of the brigades were spending more than, you know, a substantial part of their funding on auditing their books that they're not going to have to do anymore because of the new agreement. That means that they can then use that funding more into their actual services and what they want to do. So it will have pros and cons, and like you said, there will be some teething issues, I'm sure, and more than happy to have that conversation if we're getting a bit of a ill bit of information. Would love to know the actual experience, but at the same time, we did definitely have a very in-depth conversation about that.
And we've certainly asked for a visit from essentially is providing that grant, we've asked for visibility of reporting as well. So,
Awesome. No more questions. I might wrap it up. Thank you for... someone's else? No? All right. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you at the next community forum. Thanks. Oh, hang on. What? Oh, Mary wants to say... Okay. Do you want to talking or just... This Mary? Yeah. I know Mary. I was talking to her in the kitchen. All right. I'll see Mary before we leave, and thank you, everyone, for turning up. Cheers.